I've sorted through my entire library to bring you the top 5 card tricks in the world. To many magicians and participants, card tricks are all the same, so we have to work really hard to overcome that. I assure you that my list is as different as it will be controversial. And if you're trying to learn some great card magic, this is a terrific place to start because I'm going to share some of the best versions and where you can learn them. But more importantly than just giving you a playbook of the top 5 card tricks, I'm going to explain why these are such great tricks. As we go through my list, if you agree, let me know, and if not, why? There are so many great card tricks. Honestly, it was hard to pare this down, so I'm going to start with an honorable mention because I think it contains an important lesson that I want to share with you. My honorable mention is Red Hot Mama, or the Chicago opener, created by Al Leach back in 1950. If you've seen or played around with this trick at all, you know it's a tremendous trick. It's easy to do. It packs a powerful punch. There are several moments of surprising magic, and it easily resets. You can learn some great versions from a lot of different places. Pop Hayden has an entire manuscript dedicated to the psychology and the routining behind this called the Chicago Surprise. Highly recommended. David Williamson has a version in his book, Williamson's Wonders, where the whole deck changes colors. There are so many great versions and such a great trick. You might be asking, why didn't this make your list and it's only honorable mention? And ultimately, it's because it's just a pick-a-card trick. It's one of the best pick-a-card tricks out there, but this is exactly the stereotype that people expect when you pull out a deck of cards. Now, it turns that premise right on its head with what happened subsequently, but I still had to cut something out. The lesson I want us to take away from this trick, and the reason that it's outside the top 5, is because it's really easy for people to forget pick-a-card tricks. And you're going to notice this as a recurring theme throughout this list of top 5, that these tricks are different than what people would expect, and they're going to present and paint a very vivid mental picture or emotional picture for your participants so that you're creating memorable magic. At number 5 on my list, I'm talking about any card at any number. Now, I don't know who actually came up with this originally, but I certainly know who popularized it, and that would be David Berglass, the international man of mystery. In fact, some people call ACAAN the Berglass effect. The myth of the Berglass effect has permeated almost every version of ACAAN. There are so many interesting stories, I recommend you look some of them up. Whether or not those stories are true, I know that the ACAAN effect is mired in a lot of controversy. There's controversy over the odds of a person naming a card and naming a number. There's controversy about whether or not anybody cares. But here's why it made my list. Because it doesn't start out as a card trick at all. Think about it. Most card tricks start with you taking a deck out of the box. In ACAAN, you typically start with a discussion, a dialogue with your audience before a deck of cards is ever even introduced. Or even if the deck is introduced so that everybody knows the conditions ahead of the effect, you're still not unboxing them, fanning them out, and asking someone, pick a card. Not only that, it's one of the very few card tricks that gives the impression that it's completely hands-off. In the best versions of this trick, you appear to never have touched the deck at all, and in some cases, you don't even have to. It uses people's minds and imaginations, and the important part is the presentation. Consider your character and how your character would present this. Is it an issue of influence? Is it an issue of creation? Is it coincidence? Use the fact that your audience is making all of the choices and you're not simply using them as props. My favorite version of this trick can be found in Aussie Win's repertoire and is Aussie Win's any card at any number because it just looks so clean. It looks exactly like you would expect it to. They name a number, they name a card, they take the cards out of the box, they count down to that number, and the card is there. Many versions of ACAAN are tied to memdeck work, and if you're new to that, I encourage you to check out my video I did on getting started in memdeck work. But there are also versions that are completely self-working, and I'm going to drop some links down below to Dennis Bear's Conjuring Archive so that you can scroll through all the beautiful, beautiful books that have effects related to my top 5 tricks. Number 4 on my list of top 5 tricks is the Torn and Restored plot. Now, many magicians assume that this is a relatively modern creation, but in fact, there's a stooged version of a burned and discovered card in the oldest English magic book we know of, The Discovery of Witchcraft. So while I don't know the inventor of this, it's clear to me why this is such a classic of Magic and why it has stood the test of time. Because it's so unusual. When you pull out a deck of cards and fan them, most people assume they already know what you're going to do. But when you start to tear a playing card, that is not something that normal people do with playing cards. If they're used to playing cards, whether it's poker or euchre or rummy, you don't ever tear cards. So when a magician starts to tear something up, you've caught their attention. The more modern aspect of the Torn and Restored, and the one to which I'm drawn, is the piece-by-piece restoration. One of my favorite versions is an older one by Daniel Garcia called Torn. However, there are a number of lovely versions, whether or not they're a piece-by-piece restoration, and there are some that are ridiculously easy. Brent Braun's Torched and Restored comes to mind, and of course one of the most famous, and possibly one of the most difficult, is Guy Hollingworth's The Reformation. If a Torn and Restored card can be featured by David Copperfield on one of his TV Magic specials, then I think you understand there's a way to present this and make it some awesome magic. Number 3 on my list is possibly the most classic of all of the tricks I'm going to mention, and it is Cards Across. Who came up with the original? I have no idea, but there's definitely a version as far back as Modern Magic in 1876. Again, our recurring theme, it is not a pick-a-card trick. You're doing something totally unique with the cards. And you have the opportunity to get your participants involved in the magic. They're counting, they're verifying, they're protecting, they're reacting to the magic. It's happening in their hands. Plus, the conditions are really easy to understand. There's a definite before picture and a definite after picture where 3 cards have made the invisible journey from one person's group of cards to another. There are lots of different methods to perform this, including palms, no palming methods, ones using envelopes like the Al Bakerd method, ranging from the super easy to, well, really none of them are all that difficult. If you're interested in learning this one, there's a great version in Card College too. But be sure to check out that link down below for all the various versions and ones that might ignite your fire. So why is this trick on my list? It's on my list because 1, it's really easy to do. 2, there's a version that will fit almost every performance condition. But most importantly, and number 3, it's all about the presentation. That's a recurring theme throughout this. It's so easy to do that you can really focus on injecting you and your character. What attributes do you give to yourself? Are you funny? Are you mysterious? Are you creepy? There's a lot of different ways to do this. And a perfect example of this is my favorite performer, Mac King. He performs this under the guise of the Cloak of Invisibility, and it's probably my favorite piece of magic to see performed. This didn't come to him overnight, and if you watch my interview with him, you can hear him talk about the evolution of this effect, where he was trying to find a way to perform it because it was such strong magic, but it just needed that presentational hook that he found through his roommate. So for you, think about who you are and the emotions you want to convey. How can you do that? This is a great place to start. Number 2 on my list is Out of This World by Paul Curry. In fact, this is the trick that got me started down this path of looking at the top 5 tricks, because a long time ago, Hugard's Magic Monthly held a written poll to ask magicians what their favorite card tricks were, and Out of This World took the number 1 spot. Why? You guessed it, because it's not a pick-a-card trick. Your participants are making all of the decisions. It's all about your interaction with them. What are they thinking? Why are they thinking it? Is it intuition? Is it circumstance? Is it magic? Your participants are the heroes, and that's missing from so much of magic. Most of the time, they're picking a card, and really, they're just a prop for you to show how great you are and what you can do with a pack of cards. But here's a pro tip, and if there's only one thing that you take out of this entire video, it should be this. If a robot could do exactly what your participant is doing, then they're not a participant in the magic. They're merely a prop for your show. And that's a crying shame. There are versions that meet every condition that you could conceive. Of course, the original full deck version you can find in Paul Curry's book, Worlds Beyond. And it's still a great trick. It might just be a little long depending on your audience attention spans. There are versions that use just a packet of cards. There are versions that are impromptu from a shuffled deck, a la UF Grant's New Way Out of This World, published by Harry Lorraine as his own impromptu Out of This World, which is the version that I perform. Paul Harris, Alan Ackerman, Steve Beam, and so many others have versions of this trick, so certainly check out those links and find one that works for you and thank me later. You basically need to be living under a rock not to have access to a version of this excellent trick, so sound off down below with your preferred version. Number 1 on this list, taking the top spot, is Triumph, the original being written up by Di Vernon in The Stars of Magic way back in 1946. In a surprising twist of events, the top spot actually goes to a pick a card trick. But why? Because the finding the participant's card is almost secondary to the magic that's happening in this routine. I think it's a great piece of magic because there's an inherent multi-plot system going on here. Sure, you're trying to find their card, but there's also the question in your participants' minds about the mixed up order of the deck with the face-up cards and the face-down cards. This is a real mess. And again, you're seeing that very clear picture between the before and after conditions of the magic. Di Vernon, in inventing and sharing this effect with the magic community, lived by his own advice that the best effects can be described in one simple sentence. There are lots of versions of this, and probably one of the easiest and still a favorite is Jay Sankey's Back in Time, which you can learn from the Definitive Sankey or a myriad of other places where he's put it into video or print. The original by Di Vernon in The Stars of Magic is also excellent, particularly if you are seated at a table. And as a pro tip, if you perform that version, you can do so with a memorized deck, and you'll still be pretty much in stack order at the end of the trick. Many creators have put their own twist on this plot, with some of those notable versions belonging to people like John Bannon from Impossibilia, the Play It Straight Triumph. There's a version for every need, and this has rapidly become one of the most popular tricks of our time, and I believe deserving of the top spot as the best card trick out there. These are obviously my top tricks, but I want to hear yours. Every trick I mentioned was pretty much designed to be performed as a close-up effect, but if you'd like to make this play for a bigger audience, then click here to watch this video about a book that proposes to help you do exactly that. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.